We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
As the GOP primary field expands to almost 2016 levels, it's time to ask what factors are coming into play and if anyone can stop former President Donald Trump from seizing the nomination. Well, we're fortunate to be joined once again by longtime host of this here radio show, Mr. Tim Donner, who's also Liberty Nation's senior political analyst, so he's the right person to ask. Tim, can anyone stop the Donald? And great to have you here, by the way.
Well, yeah, the Iron Pentagon of Washington can stop Trump. The political class, the media, which does its bidding, federal law enforcement, the intelligence agencies, all backed up by academia. Yeah, they can stop Trump, but there's no Republican who can stop Trump in the primary, which, of course, is your question. But I've got, there's a huge caveat to this, because the idea of a guy winning a presidential nomination with 2 indictments on him, by that time maybe 3, possibly a conviction, is so unprecedented that how people are going to react to it, there is no comparable situation in the past that we could use as a reference point, right? But
I think that's part of Donald Trump's. I hate to use the term magic, but he's a defier of expectations, isn't he? Since he first came down the golden escalator.
Well, it's interesting that in some ways, in notable ways, this primary in the Republican side has great similarities to 2016 in terms of the volume of candidates. You've got 13 recognized candidates in this race, and you had 19 in 2016. Now, of course, Trump benefited from the large field then because they split the anti-Trump vote, and he'll benefit from it again. The difference is that in 2016, all of those candidates essentially were looking for the presidential nomination. And as I write in my story on LibertyNation.com this week about how the Republican presidential nomination primaries turned into a VP beauty contest, it appears that the majority of those 13 candidates are in it to audition for vice president. That's why I call it a VP beauty pageant, because, Tim Scott represents one thing. He could, amplify Trump's message in the black community to the extent that there's a black community, so to speak. But let's say to black voters, Nikki Haley can help among women. You even take a guy like Vivek Ramaswamy, who is not doing well in the polls, but is a very serious candidate, a thought leader, and he's also a person of color. He could add something different to the ticket. And you've got then the truly obscure candidates. And I'll point mostly to Francis Suarez, the mayor of Miami, who nobody's heard of, except the first time I heard him, I instinctively called him Xavier Suarez because his father was Xavier, was also the mayor of Miami. But anyway,
speaking of Mr. Suarez, I should just point out that a lot of the criticism of him is that he's essentially a mayor in title only, as in he oversees a district, but it's more of a titular role, and so he hasn't really ran a district, let alone something the size of a nation, which of course very few people have. I think that's the main criticism of him, that he needs some kind of
it's true, but he has the look,
exposure.
And I think it's clear that the reports, I think, are true that Trump is, would be wise to consider him because he is just strikingly handsome, young, just the right image. And of course, you hope that he would help a lot with Latino voters as a number 2 on the ticket. But then you've got guys like the North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, who I think most people in North Dakota haven't even heard of. Sorry to say.
Doug who?
Yeah, Governor who. And then you got Will Hurd, who is a person of color, former congressman from Texas, who, it's matter of fact, it's somewhat noteworthy, though we're not going to play the race card here, but 5 of the 13 Republican candidates for president are people of color. That's about 40%. I don't think you would have seen that years ago. So really, Trump has got it. But what if he gets convicted and there's shots? I mean, I don't think this is going to happen before the election, but what if there's literally the shots of him being handcuffed, being brought through processing or even behind bars? I mean, psychologically, it's hard to imagine someone really voting for someone who's literally in prison. So this is why, or under multiple indictments. So that's why this is something that we've never seen before. So there's no precedent.
Yeah, I think it's odd that how to phrase this. So at the moment, the indictments and potential future indictments and even possible convictions are a ways out. And so what's happening is people are seeing the preemptory stages of these indictments at the moment. And for Republican voters and for quite a substantial number of independent voters, this is actually increasing Trump's support. And you can kind of see why, because when Trump said they're out to get me, they're out to get me, there's a witch hunt against me. Now, at the moment, obviously, he hasn't been found guilty of anything.
Put it this way, the martyrdom outdoes the misdeeds.
Yeah, very much so.
In other words, people look at him going, I'll be damned if I'm going to have the Democrats tell me who I can vote for, even though maybe I don't like Trump at all. I'm sure as hell going to vote for him just to send a message that you cannot arrest your political enemies.
Yeah, and of course, he's back in the position of being the underdog, which for a former president is quite unique, right? It's
true.
I mean, it hasn't. I don't think it's happened before, where you've got a former president who.
I mean, I don't know, when Grover Cleveland served his second term 4 years removed from his first, I don't know whether he was considered an underdog to recapture the presidency, but that's the only other time. It was interesting. Gerald Ford was considering a run in 1980 and then was considered apparently for the vice president's role under Ronald Reagan. But that never materialized. That's the closest we've seen to a former president getting back into the fray.
Yeah, it's interesting times indeed. Now, you spoke just now about the people who are essentially lining up for the VP beauty pageant, which is, I do recommend everybody goes and reads that in-depth article on the pages of libertynation.com. But what about the contenders who are actually running for president? As far as I can see, that's Donald J. Trump. That's Ron DeSantis, and that's Chris Christie, who recently just polled, I think it was 6%, which is Chris Christie's best showing yet. What do you make of those?
Well, 6 seems to be the magic number for Chris Christie. That's the percentage of the vote, and that's what place he came in the 2016 New Hampshire primary, 6th place, and then he dropped out. Look, he is, even by his own admission, essentially a paid assassin who ran against Trump, then headed up his transition team in 2016-17 as he was preparing for the presidency. And then when he didn't get the job he wanted, which was attorney general, he eventually turned on Trump, called him a coward, and now he's in as an anti-Trump candidate. So, he's a career politician, knows how to change positions rather easily, but he's almost admitted that he is in for the sole purpose of taking down Donald Trump.
I wonder if he's getting a paycheck from Joe Biden for that. I'm just kidding. We'll be right back with Tim Donner after this short break discussing the far more contentious Democrat primary season. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.